Daniel, thanks for your time today. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Frank. If only the radio stations were the plaintiffs in this lawsuit, then we'd be going to trial and there may be an expansion team. So clearly the interest was there to keep the story going in perpetuity.
Yes. So when I talked to the group and people associated with the St. Louis legal group, they basically said they did not want to put this lawsuit in the hands of 12 strangers. They went with the bird in hand because you just never know what would happen with those 12 jurors. So take the $790 million. Your reaction to that? I know you're not a fan of it.
You mean you'd find 12 St. Louisans who would decide the case against St. Louis in favor of a group that stole a team from the city, brought it to the West Coast, and injured the city to the tune of billions of dollars. You're going to find 12 people who are going to reach that decision. I think what you were told is code for the lawyers wanted to ensure that they got paid in advance of the Christmas season on a per-partner basis for the two law firms. That settlement amount that's reduced to a contingent fee basis for the lawyers, that works out to the life-altering amount of more than $10 million per partner. Had this gone to a trial and all the way down the road to an appeal, it would be probably 3-4 years before they were able to collect anything. But my theory or my argument is, well, you had the most amount of leverage through and including the trial, and the number wasn't going to go down. It was only going to go up. And if you were sitting with a bird in the hand of $2 billion, $3 billion settlement package, monetary judgment, now you're in the catbird seat to, one, demand a new team, as well as the payment of attorney's fees. The lawyers would have gotten at least the same amount, if not more, had they had the confidence that this would have resulted in a positive verdict. Because even if the NFL had claimed, we got screwed over by a hometown jury, you're in a much stronger position with $1 billion plus monetary judgment than you are 50 days out from trial following 1 day of mediation. What really drove this decision here is that the city and county and stadium authority leaders wanted the money. They didn't want a team. And that's who made the decision. And, of course, the lawyers drive that decision because they want to pull out the maximum amount of money they can, because this is a business. This is not a pro bono case for these two law firms. So if you want to pin the blame on anyone, it's certainly not 12 anonymous jurors who could have decided the case against the city. That wasn't going to – I mean, do you really believe that was going to happen? I mean, that is a wives' tale.
Well, what about this angle? And I talked to a member of an NFL organization who was following this thing relatively closely, and he said a team was never, ever on the table. That was not.
In November of 2021, but circumstances have a way of changing. Leverage has a way of dramatically strengthening in favor of the three St. Louis governmental plaintiffs, and you're sitting in it's a different question to ask on March 1st, 2022, when the trial is over, the NFL and Stan Kroenke are on the hook for $3-4 billion. Ask the question then, and anybody who says a team would never be on the table is lying to you.
So, here's what I don't understand
about this, but it's the truth. It's the truth. A team is the easiest way out. Maybe not in November, but 3-4 months down the road, and the city had all the leverage in the world. This is the last place that the NFL owners wanted to go to in January and February during a Super Bowl. They didn't squeeze enough out of the league, either monetarily or non-monetarily. They settled too early to get the guaranteed paycheck.
Why not wait, and why do it like the day before Thanksgiving? Why not do it January 9th, where you're really down to the wire? This was awfully early on the settlement.
Yeah, Frank, you should have been a trial lawyer, because that's exactly the play to make. There was nothing that could have happened between today and January 9th to change the settlement leverage for the city. It doesn't go down. It only stays the same or goes up dramatically. And faced with the proposition of Stan Kroenke and all the other owners going to St. Louis, Roger Goodell going to St. Louis, being under oath, having to air all their dirty laundry and tell the truth about what actually happened, that's the scenario that the NFL wanted to avoid at all costs, because they're not just trying to fight the public relations battle and try to avoid the loss in the St. Louis case, but they've got the city of Oakland, or at the time they had the city of Oakland potentially lurking in the background as another lawsuit, another trial that could go forward in state court in California next year or in 2 years. And this is public testimony that is forever preserved under oath, that could be utilized and wielded and weaponized in future relocation lawsuits. The NFL had many other reasons besides this case to try to get out of it. And to play devil's advocate, of course, if you give the city of St. Louis a team, that means that becomes the ask of every other city that sues the NFL. So yes, there are two sides to this. But it's St. Louis, which is in the trial right now. It's St. Louis, which had everything going in its favor: a local jury, a judge issuing favorable rulings, the potential for damages to be in excess of $5 billion if you factor in punitive damages, and there would have been punitive damages here. St. Louis was in that situation right now, and this would have been the best deal that the NFL could have cut in February or March, when they were on the adverse side or the wrong side of a multi-billion-dollar jury verdict. And once you go to a jury and there are factual findings made, it becomes a lot more difficult to overturn that on appeal. And if I were the NFL, I wouldn't be banking on a favorable appeal in the Missouri State Court appellate system. No way.
So to reiterate to our listening audience who are just joining us, you are basically saying that the lawyers representing St. Louis sold out for their money, not the cities. But
I didn't say sell out.
What are you saying?
I say that's the danger. Any time a lawyer is working on a contingent fee arrangement, because the economics associated with a contingent fee arrangement, where the lawyers don't get paid unless there's a judgment, there's a built-in incentive to settle a case. If the city had been paying their lawyers on an hourly basis, and they've been paying the lawyers $10 million or $15 million to date, I would imagine that there'd be a much stronger incentive, or a much stronger conviction to move this case forward to get your pound of flesh.
Let me ask you this, though. From what I understand,
I'm never going to say the lawyers sold out the city, because they did a great job. But let's be realistic here. The settlement check, or the proceeds of the settlement that are payable to the lawyers, is life-altering for every single equity partner in those two law firms, and that cannot be ignored. But I'm not going to place this entirely on the lawyers, because the city's mayor spent 8 years as a treasurer. She had zero interest in citing a new NFL team. The client made the decision, and the city, the county, and the stadium authority didn't fight hard enough and make this a priority. They were just more concerned about, adding funds to their budget for 2022, 2023. But a football team is sort of a perpetual economic impact, favorable economic impact on the city for a generation.
These
monies will be spent and realized and expended in year one, and you'll never feel it at the street level.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. I think the team would have been much better than any kind of settlement, because it will last for generations, have an economic impact for generations. But here's my question:
100%.
Here's my question though. If the lawyers get this number from the NFL, hey, we want to settle for $790 million, and then they go to the city and the county and the regional authority, and they say, well, this is what we could take. And the city, county, and the regional authority say, okay, $790 million is a lot of money. How could you second guess the lawyers in this situation? Because they made the decision, right? The city, county, and the regional authority, when the money's on the table, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the lawyers play a very influential role in making a recommendation to their client. I mean, the mayor and the county executive, they're not as knowledgeable about the potential range of outcomes as the lawyers are, but a law firm in that situation has an extraordinary amount of influence and persuasion over the decision that the client makes, because the lawyer can really size up the case effectively. But if the lawyer is pushing strongly for a settlement, it's not going to take much to convince the client to sign on to that. And it really came down to the objectives of this litigation were to recover money, not recover a team. There was a there was a path here to an NFL franchise if they had just held on a little bit longer and went forward to a trial. You were literally 50 days away from trial, and the possibilities were much more favorable 2 months from now than they were at the end of the first day of mediation, 50 days before trial. Clearly, the law firm played an outsized role in persuading the client to settle. But if the client had wanted a team, they would have sued for a team or would have held out for a team. So I'm not trying to assign blame for the lawyers, but it's just one of the realities of contingent fee litigation in that lawyers devote tens of thousands of hours to a case. They never see a dime unless and until there's a judgment or a settlement. And quite frankly, it would be foolish for lawyers to want to keep their money in abeyance for 4 years or potentially jeopardize it and lose everything on an appellate reversal when they could get close to $250 million today. This was their estimation of what they thought the best that they could do without jeopardizing their attorney's fee.
Okay,
if it went to trial and then an appeal, there was a chance that their payday would have been delayed by years and either eliminated or pared down significantly on appeal. That was just sort of one of those judgment calls that contingent fee law firms often make. And was it the best deal that the client could have gotten? Absolutely not. Was it a good deal? Sure. But it could have been a demonstrably better deal with the passage of just a little bit more time and holding the league's feet to the fire and putting them into the crucible of an actual trial with their executives and commissioner under oath. You put the ultimate squeeze on the National Football League, and St. Louis cashed out early. That's the bottom line.
Okay, a couple of other quick topics before we let you go. Where does the John Gruden legal action stand, and how strong do you think his case is?
Well, it's strong for many of the same reasons that the St. Louis case was strong. Just like in real estate, it's all about location, location, location. This lawsuit was filed in Nevada state court in a jury pool that is probably not very happy about the fact that someone at the NFL decided to torpedo the Raiders season by holding on to this information for months and then conveniently or strategically assassinating John Gruden. It was a professional hit job, as I think Brent Musburger famously was quoted saying the other day on his own network. So the location of the trial bodes very well for John Gruden's case, and the case can't be moved to federal court, which is an important procedural maneuver that the league would often want to utilize to get out of a hometown jury situation. Even though it's a local jury pool in Nevada, whether it's state court or federal court, state courts are typically much more plaintiffs friendly, and the league can't remove the case to federal court because as an association, it is deemed to be doing business in every single state. And by virtue of the fact that Gruden is from Nevada and the league does business in Nevada, you can't remove a case where there are residents from the same state on both sides of the equation. So they're stuck in state court. And I suspect that just like with the St. Louis case, eventually the pressure will be put on the NFL to settle the case and to pay John Gruden something, because the alternative is to have all this discovery under oath, league executives being brought in for depositions, and there's no guarantee that that deposition testimony is going to be sealed. I mean, John Gruden is never going to work again for the NFL or any NFL head coaching job. He's likely persona non grata on any of the networks or media companies, except maybe he could work for one of the sports betting operators as a football analyst. His employment prospects are significantly dimmed, and I think he brought the lawsuit in the best form that he could. And I think there's a very good chance that this will withstand the same kind of dismissal motions and summary judgment motions that the NFL tried in St. Louis and were unsuccessful with. So if he gets it to a point where it's a trial date, or their deposition testimony that's going to be taken, I think the league will settle. This is not a $1 billion case like St. Louis was. This is a case where the damage figure is probably in the 8 figures, which may be more tolerable for the NFL to take on, relative to the risk of having all of their emails potentially displayed to the plaintiff's lawyers are potentially being revealed in court filings. I think there's more than enough. There are at least 10, 20, 30 million reasons why the NFL would want to settle this litigation and keep a lid on everything.
So you've been covering the Missouri legislative initiative that would allow legal sports betting. Explain to our audience what the initiative is and how it would work if passed, and then how much potential revenue are we talking about being generated?
Well, it depends. It depends how it's structured. There are three proposals, at least three proposals that have been submitted within Missouri. Two bills were introduced earlier this week within the Missouri legislature. And the Missouri legislature will meet in session in 2022 and debate these various bills. But the professional sports leagues want in on the action too, or the professional sports teams, and have proposed a ballot question for the November 2022 general election that would grant licenses to the professional sports teams to conduct both in person and online. And it remains to be seen which of these various measures, whether they're legislative or the ballot question, which one of those at the end of the day will be what's left standing. I suppose that the ballot measure is intended to put pressure on the legislature to finally pass a sports betting law in 2022 when they've hesitated over the last two legislative sessions because of the other issues and other concerns relating to video lottery terminals. There's been a lot of debate and controversy about the legality of these machines, and they have somehow overshadowed the sports betting issue. So I think the ballot measure proposal is almost designed to put pressure on the legislature to finally pass a sports betting law in 2022. So one way or another, I believe that at the end of next calendar year, Missourians will have the legal right to wager on sports. How big of a market is it? Well, it's hard to say. I mean, it's based on population size. And I will say that the Missouri market is a very sports-centric market with passion for the teams, and there will be a significant amount of wagering done in the legal market where it could be several $1 billion of wagering transactions every year. And what this could mean to the state is probably tax revenues of somewhere near $100 million annually, but that's less important than the revenues that are generated for casinos and some of the sports franchises. Those entities are in a position to collectively earn more than $1 billion, or potentially more than $2 billion annually from having legal sports betting. So there's a lot of money, but it'll also drive so much fan engagement and be very helpful to the bottom line of the professional sports teams if they're the ones to get it. And this is why an NFL franchise in St. Louis and a new stadium could have paid, or the wagering revenues from having an online sports betting license could have potentially solved the stadium construction cost issue, or at least helped a great deal towards paying for it.
Good stuff. Honored to have you on, sir. We greatly appreciate your time. We'll talk down the road, Daniel. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere, Frank. I'm happy to join you anytime. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and to learn a little bit more about the St. Louis market. Most passionate sports fan base I've ever encountered, and I tell you, it's not anger over what happened. I truly think there's so much enthusiasm around football and a history of football. I learned firsthand how passionate you guys are about sports, and it just changed my perspective on what a great sports market is. I used to think New York was everything, and I've learned from casting a wider net across the country what some of the great markets are, and St. Louis is certainly one of them.
Good stuff. We'll talk soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, that is Daniel Wallach joining us on the Hollywood Casino Press Box. It is amazing when you think about it, that we have such an incredible sports town with arguably the best baseball town in the country. The hockey team supported so passionately. We have a soccer team where the ticket sales are just off the roots, off the charts, I should say. The golf tournaments, whether it's the PGA or the Champions Tour, they break records. The gymnastic championships broke records. Everything we do is absolutely insane. But we just won like the lottery in hell in the NFL with owners. I mentioned a team for generations. If we would have got a team, because there's no chance in the world that we would have gotten another horrible owner. The odds were against us that we got one bad owner, but to get two is just that's not going to happen. There's no way we could have gotten three. Yeah, if we would have gotten an NFL team, it would have worked because there's no way we could have gotten Bidwell or Kroenke. Like Indianapolis didn't get that. Tennessee didn't get that. Buffalo hasn't gotten that. We just had incredibly bad luck. And, in terms of the team, I'll reiterate this again, because when the settlement figure came down, I have one very good friend that is with an NFL team, immediately called and said, hey, this was the story. I go, we didn't even get a team. We didn't get $1 billion. He said, let me stop you. He goes, you were never, ever going to get a team. He goes, I don't know who put that out there. He goes, Mike Florio is not an NFL owner. Okay. That wasn't happening. So, all right, let's take a short time out. Well, actually, we got a couple of minutes here. Let's take some questions, some texts. Bob in South St. Louis talking about LeBron James. It's dumb. Grabbing the junk is wrong.
And okay, here's my thing. I can understand being annoyed by it, but isn't the use of the word wrong just a little bit extreme in this case? Like grabbing the junk is wrong. Like, really? Yeah, it's dumb and it's childish, but wrong. Like he's a bad person for doing it.
Well, nobody's saying he's a bad person.
What a terrible
example.
I mean, it's a dumb, childish thing to do. I just think people.
But you don't know what's going to happen too, though. I know, but there's going to be a bunch of high school kids who are going to be doing this.
But here's the thing:
it's going to distort the game. Where's some civility?
Kobe did the same thing.
Wait a minute. I don't remember Kobe grabbing it all the time.
Yeah, no. There's videos out there of Kobe doing the exact same celebration after a big shot, and it was. And listen, when I was in 7th grade, we were doing that because it was Tanaka from Major League 2. Like that was a movie. That was a movie we all saw when we were little kids.
LeBron was being disrespectful to the Pacers. And it was just, you don't do that. You don't do that if you're the 8th man on the team. You don't do that if you're one of the 3 or 4 greatest players of all time. It is dumb.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
Illinois out-rebounded Iowa 52-23. How about that last night? That is such a great win.
Yeah, he is such a monster. You talked about how he's just more physical. He's using his body in a better way, and he's just dominating teams inside.
Lawrence Pepperfield, 12 Days of Charity is the same day as Auburn down in Soulard. They sold 25,000 tickets to that pub. I'm not sure. It's going to be a wild atmosphere in Shavitz December 18th. That's for sure. All the other goats did was change their number later in their career.
They did that too.
Yeah. Hey, Frank, not sure if you're allowed to play any of the awards dinner last night. The only part I heard was Gary Unger. He was fantastic. Good stories about the family, Bobby Plager in St. Louis. In fact, what we did with Gary is that we asked him, because this is the 50-year anniversary of the brawl in Philadelphia, and Andy Moeller, our producer, is doing a piece on it. And, gosh, he went into great detail how a cop was going to hit one of the Blues players with a billy club, and he grabbed the billy club by the cop from behind and held it against the cop's neck as he tried to save a Blues player from getting hit with a billy club. And none of these Blues players should have gotten hit, period. So Gary Unger did something pretty courageous that he stopped the cop from performing bodily harm. Let's see. High school kids are already doing this. They're high school kids. Laugh out loud. It's what they do. It's childish. Absolutely wrong. Not exactly. No, it's wrong. Of course it was wrong, blank. It's wrong in that situation, dumb.
He called me an idiot, and the other guy called me dumb. This is great.
Frank, did you catch the PBS documentary on the Hill? I watched it last night. Terrific stuff. I've seen parts of it. It is good. It's called The Pub Crawl. Well, I don't know anything about this.
No, the 12 days of the 12 days of giving. Is that the name of it again? So it's a pub crawl, 12 days of charity down in Soulard, and it's across multiple days, and they sell tickets to it, and it's one of the biggest events in St. Louis. Obviously, not the biggest event in Soulard. I think the new the Mardi Gras parade still tops it off, but it's always a huge event.